Khan Shalom Akim. Want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rawchaa, Qadash. Double honors to the other apostles of great Millstone, who teach and rule well. And Shalom to the sincere Akim, spreading truth and sincerity. Shalom. This video I want to go into an article on CarterHeavyIndustries.com. And the title of the article reads, "The Controlled Demolition of the Food Supply." And the first scripture that I want to bring out before going on in the article is 2nd Esdras chapter 15 and verse 5. Behold, said the Lord Yahawah, I will bring plagues upon the world, the sword, famine, death, and destruction. And this is a prophecy. If we go to the first verse, it says, Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in their mouth, said the Lord Yahawah. So we are commanded to speak towards our people, which are the Israelites, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. The words that, the things that still need to come to pass upon this earth. Because that's what a prophecy is. A prophecy is something that, if you break that word down, it says prom is before Phasai means to say. So it's actually something that you say before it's happening. And that's what we're doing. We're warning our people of the wrath to come that's going to come upon this earth by the Heavenly Father. You see? So if we jump back to the 5th verse, it says, Behold, said the Lord Yahawah, I will bring plagues upon the world. And what are those plagues? What are those things that the Most High is going to bring upon the earth? It says the sword, the famine, death, and destruction. And the sword is going into how the Most High is going to bring wars upon this earth. Situations like the purge, wars concerning races, wars concerning classes, class wars. The verse talks about famine, which is a lack of bread, a lack of food, death, which can come in many shapes and forms. It can happen by the sword, which the sword is a modern day weapon, which is the gun, by famine, by pestilences, by earthquakes, by animals. Most is going to bring all those things upon the earth. It says destruction. The ways of this society is going to collapse. The way that society is going to crumble. And eventually, destruction is going to come by way of thermonuclear missiles. You see? But the point of this lesson is the famine that's being mentioned in the 5th verse. The Most is going to bring it upon the earth. And we are prophesying about that and warning our people, like I already mentioned. So this article says to control demolition of the food supply. And the food supply, is the way, in which the original product eventually reaches the consumer. So let's say the way it reaches, the consumer all the way from the farmer. Within that, a couple of steps still need to take place. That means the farmer has to, work his produce. He needs to work the land. He needs to, feed his cattle, feed his poultry. Eventually, that has to be sold, to a manufacturer, which manufactures, the products that we're able to purchase in the store. That has to be sent towards the supermarkets, and the supermarkets eventually, sell it to the customer. But the controlled demolition goes into that. This is all pre-planned. There's a hand behind, the demolition, the destruction, or the messing up of the food supply. And before we're going to go on, there's a picture behind the title which reads a couple of articles as well, and it says photos Bonanza Meat Co. building fire on Paisano Drive near downtown El Paso. Fire erupts at meat processing facility in Lackawanna County. Crews battle major fire at Cobb Country Meat Company. Fire shuts down Nebraska GBS beef plant. Massive fire at Salinas food processing plant contained. Evacuation lifted, and so on and so on and so on. So the articles being shown, they contain information concerning these facilities that process food, meats. So it says the term bread and circuses comes from an ancient Roman poet describing how the people are governed, not by excellence and public service, but by food and distractions, like a herd of livestock. Today's circuses can be found in live televised, I think, celebrity feuds and on Twitter, a reflection of the human herd's short attention span, meaningless distractions to keep everyone calm while their food supply is being destroyed. And the bread and circus goes into, as long as the people are being fed and are being entertained, they won't revolt and riot against the government. That's what it actually goes into. So as long as the people are supplied with food and with entertainment, you are able to control them. But once these things, are taken away slowly but surely, you know, the people are gonna realize, you know, that they have to rely on a more primal instinct. They're gonna start to think for themselves. They're gonna realize, like, hey, I don't have food. I need to acquire food for myself and for my family. That's why it also says in Second Esdras, the 15th chapter, and verse 19, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. So the time is going to come that during the time of famine, those that you know, those that were close to you, they're not going to care about your well being because they're first going to think about their own and their own family. They're going to come into the house, they're going to look, for food and supplies to survive. And if you are in their way between them surviving or you surviving, they might kill you, because it's either you or them. That's all going to happen because of the famine that's going to be brought upon the earth together with the great tribulation, which is the time of Jacob's trouble. The time in which, you know, it's going to be a time that has never been upon this earth. A time that you cannot even imagine, though it be even told you. You can, you can think about the purge. You can think about the road. You can think about the Walking Dead. But all these movies and series together come short of what's going to happen upon the earth. you know. But that time is gonna come, and the time of famine is gonna come too. Back to the article. So the first paragraph it says today's circuses can be found in live televised celebrity feuds and on Twitter, a reflection on the human herd's short attention span. Meaningless distractions to keep everyone calm while their food supply is being destroyed, and that's what's happening. Whether people want to believe it or not, this is what's happening. You know, because the people that are in power, you know, they can do those things. If you think about their goal to establish their new world order, they want to have humanity under 500 million. That's their plan. That's their world domination plan. It's more easier to control so many people, than it is to control 8 billion people. Starvation has been used as a weapon of mass destruction for centuries. In just a 2-year period, Stalin's communist government murdered over 3 million people in Ukraine by simply pulling the strings of democracy, sanctions. And these sanctions are right back right now, man. Sanctions are being made, you know, are made after the feud between Russia and Ukraine. Europe, and America are, you know, suffering because of that. The grain, certain oils, the gas, the the oil. And with that oil, I mean, those that are used for cars, etc. But also sunflower oil, of course, which that's the one that actually meant earlier. Says the U.S. State Department murdered over 500,000 women and children in Iraq with starvation by sanctions. And this is exactly what is happening in America today. The Biden administration's sanctions against Russia are only succeeding at killing more innocent people all over the world by dramatically cutting down the world's food supply. There is already a significant wheat, fuel, and fertilizer shortage, which is obviously going to affect everything else, starting with fresh produce and livestock. But in order to completely collapse the food economy, they've started destroying food packaging and processing plants as well. There's nothing left on the shelf for you to eat. And right now, it might not seem like these things are going to happen because there's still a certain amount available to the public. But it does say in Habakkuk 2 and the third verse, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. The prophecies, are set for a specific time. Most has everything under precise control, and he decides when the famine is actually gonna happen. Right now, is only leading up to that moment. So right now, it doesn't really look like it yet because the strings are being pulled from behind the scenes. And those that have eyes to see and ears to hear, they understand what's going on. And also, as it says in Amos chapter 3 and verse 7, surely the Lord Yahawah will do nothing, but he revealed his secret unto his servants, the prophets. So the prophets of Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi, they are in the know. And they're the ones that are revealing the things that are happening upon the earth through the spirit and power of Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi. But going back to Habakkuk 2 and 3, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Do it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come and will not tarry. So, like I mentioned, it might not look like the famine is about to come or is coming, but you just have to have patience. You just need to, you know, wait a little longer because it is gonna come for sure. So the next thing in the article, the paragraph is being named destruction of food processing slash distribution plants. And it says over the past month alone, it has been confirmed that over a dozen disabling accidents at food distribution and processing plants, some 80 in total since the string of accidents began. We're talking about some very significant plants. The Taylor Farm facility in Salinas, California was completely destroyed by fire. Two major potato processing plants in Belfast, Maine, and one in Washington that were completely gutted, coinciding with an already ongoing potato shortage globally. And it's not just produce plants. Recently, there was a fire that took out a Nestle food plant in Jonesboro, Arkansas, affecting frozen food brands, which people may rely on when fresh food is not available. So the places where the food is actually processed, being prepared and made ready for the consumer to buy in a store, and after that being distributed to the supermarkets, you know, they're being, you know, they're caught fire, and You might say, hey, that's by coincidence. But if so many if so many of them happens in a short period of time, then you need to ask yourself a couple of questions. Reading on, the most recent instance appears to be the destruction of Oregon-based Azure Standards Joint's headquarters and warehouse facilities during the night of April 18th. In the text of an email alerting affiliates to the damage, the company describes itself as the United States' largest independent food distributors. It notes that basically any liquid product, such as honey, oil, and vinegar, will be out of stock as a result of the damage. Azure Standard also states it's lost its food packing and Caro product facility in a blaze. In another instance, vegetable and nut processing facility in Dufour, Oregon became engulfed in flames for unknown reasons. The independent distributor of natural, organic, and non-GMO foods, which employs around 150 people, burned to the ground. And that's actually kind of messed up, man, because non-GMO food is actually, what we're supposed to eat. But right now we're eating a lot of GMO. So that food that is actually good for us, is slowly but surely being taken away as well. Because what happens when you eat GMO? Well, not recent studies, but studies have shown, in mice that those that, did eat the GMO, you know, they suffered because of that. They suffered. Let me show you. Um, so let me see. It's too small. So it says first ever long-term study of GMO effects. Rat-fed GMO corn for 2 years. Scary. So they develop all kind of cancers, man. Monsanto GM maize may face Euro ban after French study links to cancer. So yeah, and we do understand that we're eating our bread defiled among the Gentiles, and knowing that we're surrounded by our enemies and we need to go to our enemies for the want of all things, we also need to keep our faith in the Heavenly Father that, yeah, we're gonna be exposed to all those poisons all around us. But we need to have the faith in the Heavenly Father that nothing's gonna touch us like that. That we ain't gonna get sick like us rest. That we ain't gonna develop cancer like that. That's the faith that we still need to have. So it says 1 week before that massive fire brought down a meat processing plant in Conway, New Hampshire, after burning for 16 hours, multiple fire crews finally put out the fire at East Conway Beef and Pork, but the facility is completely destroyed. Just weeks before that, a massive fire engulfed a Walmart distribution center in Plainfield, Indiana, where over 1,000 employees shipped food and other supplies all over the region. The fire destroyed the massive 1 million square foot operation. So yeah, these processing plants, are targeted, man. It also says decimated poultry stocks, which is chicken. It says, however, the assault on the food supply and its distribution network is not limited to destruction of processing and distribution. With remarkable timing, a highly pathogenic avian flu has decimated poultry stocks globally, affecting 24 states in the U.S., with 1.4 million birds culled in Pennsylvania, another 600K in Nebraska, another 5.3 million egg-laying hens were euthanized in Iowa, as well as 1.5 million culled in the EU, and so on, causing both poultry meat and egg prices to more than double since March. So also the eggs, man. the eggs and the chicken is being affected. And you have to realize, like, yeah, if you buy eggs, it's gonna be messed up. You might buy a couple of eggs, for like, a couple of euros, but then you have to realize like how many things that you buy in the store do contain eggs within that ingredient. So it has a domino effect on other products as well that you purchase in the store. And they might need to find alternatives for that, which is not going to be as good. Right now, they sometimes offer um, different type of ingredients being used because of the lack of sunflower oil, for instance. You know, which might alter the quality, might alter the taste or the experience of the product, which also has an effect on whether you're going to buy it or not. You know, even if the price is cheaper. HPAI, specifically the H5N1 bird flu, has been spreading across the US like wildfire. As of today, it has resulted in the deaths of millions of birds, mainly chickens and turkeys, but is now popping up in wild flocks of birds across the Midwest. As of writing this article, Scotland has also identified the H5N1 virus in a poultry farm. And the date of the article is the 26th of April 2022. So it has been, about 2 months ago. But this article is still relevant considering the times that we're in, the times that we're heading into, because, you know, as the next paragraph is going to go into, the fertilizer shortage, is not something of, the month of April only, but it's something that's, going to continue to happening because that's part of the famine that the Most High is going to bring upon the earth. It will have an effect on the famine. Aiding to the pressure on the food supply is multiple issues stemming from severe fertilizer shortages. In the US, the world's largest fertilizer company said Union Pacific Rail had hit it with railroad-mandated shipping reductions, instructing CF Industries to decrease shipment by a whopping 20%. Tony Will, president and chief executive officer of CF Industries, said, "Not only will fertilizer be delayed by these shipping restrictions, but additional fertilizer needed to be complete spring applications may be unable to reach farmers at all by placing this arbitrary restriction on just a handful of shippers. Union Pacific is jeopardizing farmers' harvests and increasing the cost of food for consumers." You see? And if you don't have the money to purchase, you know, that product, hey, that's a famine, man. That's a famine. The reasoning behind UPA's mandate to cut fertilizer shipment is congestion in rail car inventories. The story has largely been downplayed and ignored in mainstream media, with only 270 word Associated Press, writer CF Press release repeated it ad nauseum. It says in other instances, multiple fires at fertilizer plants have occurred. Ooh, coincidence, eh? With one company experiencing two catastrophic fires at different plants. Nutrient AG Solutions fertilizer plant in Sunnyside, Washington had a fire burn through 1.7 million pounds of sulfur in early March, only to be followed by another major fire at the fertilizer plant in Leoti, Kansas in late April. The fertilizer crisis is not limited to the US, however, with both Russia and Ukraine declaring to halt a fertilizer export. Russia is the world's largest exporter of fertilizers, accounting for 23% of ammonia export, 14% of urea export, 10% of processed phosphate export, and 21% of potash exports, according to data from the Fertilizer Institute. Then Ukraine suspended exports, saying the ban would help to maintain balance in the domestic market, and applied it to nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and complex fertilizers. So that also will hit the food market, man. It also says US and UK paying farmers to stop farming. Going back to last May, the Biden administration began pushing farmers to add agricultural land to the Conservation Reserve Program, a federally funded program allegedly aimed at preserving the environment. The program is essentially paying farmers not to farm, a very odd decision given the widely predicted food shortages. And what's gonna happen then is like, oops, you know, uh, you know, even though these people know, man, they're not gonna be like, oh yeah, we should have done something else. I'm like, oops, we yeah, yeah. A state level plan in California is going to pay farmers to grow less, this time in the name of saving water. Interestingly, the UK has a similar program going on for, again, allegedly totally different reasons. Starting this February, the British government is paying lump sums of £100,000 to any farmer who don't want to retire from farming, who want to retire from farming. Again, a strange policy during a period of geopolitical unrest impacting the food supply. Which this kind of money is only able to sustain you for 3 to 5 years, to live normally, which is also kind of weird because then you're gonna have to find something else to do, which, yeah, it says grain shortages. Ukraine and Russia produce a substantial amount of grain and other food for export. Ukraine alone produces a whopping 6% of all food calories traded in the international market. Russia, meanwhile, is the world's largest exporter of wheat, providing more than 17% of all wheat sold across national borders. At least it is used to before it was struck with some of the most severe international sanctions ever inflicted. Any way you slice it, there is a lot of bread this year that was supposed to be sourced from Ukraine or Russian wheat that definitely won't be. When it comes to cereals like wheat, corn, rice, and barley, the big players talk about millions of metric tons, or MMTs. A single MMT of wheat contains about 3.4 trillion food calories, which is enough to feed every person in Europe for about 2 days, or the entire population of Africa for about a day and a half. Although, of course, people would still need vitamins and protein. Ukraine produced about 80 MMT of grain, a category that includes wheat, corn, and barley, 2021, and is expected to harvest less than half of that this year. A shortfall of 40 MMT is enough missing calories that a country like the UK could only make it up by having everyone stop eating for 3 days. That's the thing about tons of grain. A million here and a million there, and pretty soon you've got a real issue on your plate. And a lot of food that we eat does contain grain. Breads, the cereals was being mentioned, you know, and the pasta. A lot of food that we eat contain the grains, man. That means a big staple out of the diet that a lot of people consume is going to be affected. It's not just Europe that is affected. Argentina is undergoing severe drought, with their grain output expected to be down at least 33%. And in China, farmers in Jilin, the rice basket of China, account for about 10% of nation's total and are being forced to leave fields due to zero lockdown measures in a move that has clearly nothing to do with transmission. Trucks are dumping their goods by the side of the road before they can get into cities under the threat of lengthy quarantines at the driver's expense. Bans on interregional travel are also disrupting transport of agricultural goods. Shipping halted. How is the food going to, be transported from one region to another? For instance, from America to Europe. How's that going to happen? It says another factor behind this global food crisis is China's ridiculous 4 week long total lockdown policy. Note the silence of Western zero cheerleaders now that their sadistic desire to lock up entire population has lost much of the sparkle. Recently, lockdown restrictions have been enacted in major cities like Shenzhen and Shanghai as China deals with one of its worst case demics since Wuhan in December 2019. As a result, over 500 cargo ships are stuck at the port of Shanghai and Ningbo. Continuing lockdowns have crippled supply chains from grains to raw metals and finished goods. Businesses need products, economies need businesses, and people need jobs. See where this is going? Traffic has been building up at Shanghai terminal as of April 19th, 2022. Over 470 ships are still waiting to deliver goods to China. Let's look at the satellite imagery that was captured by the Sentinel-1 satellite. Hmm, let's see. Damn, these are all ships. Damn, the most that's terrible, man. Beautiful. It says in the image, a majority of the white dots are cargo ships, many of which have been stuck in limbo for days. And this is not only happening in China, but also, in America. Uh, Cargo ships. At least it has happened in China. It's like in America. Hmm. Quick read in February. The says that the ships, the amount of ships that are waiting into America is diminishing, so not as much as it was. It says the perfect storm. Add to these factors skyrocketing fuel costs, causing food prices to double in some instances in just 6 months, prompting even Biden to announce food shortages are going to be real. And the fact that BlackRock, Gates, and the usual suspects have bought up all the farmland in the U.S., you can start to see how you may very well be eating their bucks soon, whether you like it or not. And of course, it will be blamed on the pandemic. And as always, Russia man bad. Yeah, man, and these insects we're not supposed to eat. We're only supposed to eat the crickets and the locusts. But if you look at all these things, man, that are being impacted, this is going to have a major effect on the global food supply. And what actually is quite funny is because all these nations have become dependent on each other to work. So if you're going to be dependent on another country and that country falls away, then you just have a major gap, within your own society, provide for your own people. Because you constantly have to import and export in order to have your society running, you know, especially if it's running wickedness, then you're going to get this, you know. But hey, in the end, it's all of the will of the Most High. This is how the Most High, uh, played his cards upon the earth. But The famine is coming, man. The famine is coming, whether the people want to believe it or not. This is a second Esdras, chapter 15 and verse 3. For not the imagination against thee, that not the incredulity and trouble thee that speak against thee. And some people might speak against us, who might have unbelief, concerning the things that we're speaking. But the fourth verse is what's going to happen with those that don't believe, man. For all the unfaithful should die their unfaithfulness, man. These people are going to die. They're going to die because they didn't want to listen. They didn't want to believe the things that we spoke about. But these things are slowly but surely coming to pass. Like we've told the people. This is Ezekiel chapter 33, starting at verse 32. And lo, the art unto them is a very lovely song of one that has a pleasant voice and can play well on an instrument. For they hear their words, but they do them not. So there are people that might listen to us on the videos, come to the camp, but they only do that for entertainment's sake. They like to be entertained, but they don't listen to the things that we're saying nor applying those things. Verse 33, and when this cometh to pass, Lord will come, then shall they know that the prophets have been among them. Up until the time that the prophecies starting to speak for themselves, the things that we have been proclaiming, starting off with the other apostles of Great Millstone on down, only then are the people going to realize that the man that they listened to but disregarded are actually prophets, that we spoke the truth. You see, they're going to find out that we have the truth, and that we spoke the truth when they had time, to come to the truth and to accept the truth. This is Proverbs chapter 1 verse 24, because I have called and ye refused, I've stretched out my hand and no man regarded. So the Most High stretched out his hand by his servants the prophets, but ye didn't want to listen. But ye have accepted not all my counsel, and would none of my reproof. I will also laugh at your calamity, I will mock when your fear cometh. So when this famine is going to come and you're going to be caught up in it, you're going to die by starvation. We're going to laugh our asses off, you know, because it's a terrible way to die by famine. And if you're not even going to die by famine, they're going to die by the sword or by pestilence. But you're going to die because you didn't want to listen. This is Second Esdras chapter 16 and verse 21. Behold, victuals shall be so good cheap upon earth, that they shall think themselves to be in good case, and even then shall evils grow upon earth, sword, famine, and great confusion. And the victuals go into food. So sometimes you might see um, certain things on discount that are very cheap, or able to buy food for very cheap. So you might think, hey, I'm in a good case, man. I'm actually, enjoying my life. I'm balling. I'm having a blast. But meanwhile, those people are enjoying the things that they're able to buy with a little bit of money, which usually is bullshit food anyway. Then the evils, bad time is going to become worse and worse upon the earth. Because it says, even then shall evils grow upon earth, sword, which goes into the wars, fought with the modern day weapons, famine, lack of bread, and great confusion. And the people are not going to know what's going on. Verse 22, for many of them that dwell upon earth shall perish of famine, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy. So a lot of people are going to die upon this earth by starvation. And if you're not going to die by starvation, you should die by the sword, by the modern day weapons. You see? But these things are going to happen. And slowly but surely, the food supply is being destroyed. And it's all being controlled by those that are in power. So with that, I hope and pray that this lesson was edifying. And I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rawchaa, Qadash, Double honors to the elder apostles of Great Millstone, who teach and rule well, and shalom to the sincere Akim, furnish truth and sincerity.